The night sky over Earth was quiet, calm, and peaceful. People looked up at the stars and thought they were safe. Children slept, cities glowed with lights, and the world continued its normal rhythm. But far beyond, in the cold silence of space, something was moving toward Earth. Something huge, something alive with strange power. It began as a single bright point in the sky. At first, people thought it was just another star, but it grew larger, brighter, closer, until even those who never looked up could see it. In small towns and big cities, people stopped in the streets pointing, whispering, afraid to speak too loudly. The news channels picked it up quickly. Unidentified object in orbit, they said. But it was not an object, it was a ship. The alien ship covered the sky like a dark shadow. It was bigger than any human city, bigger than the clouds. Its surface was black, smooth but alive with strange blue lines that pulsed like veins. Airplanes had to land. Birds scattered. Even the wind seemed to fall silent. It was as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Governments tried to respond. Military. Jets rose into the air. Satellites turned their eyes toward the ship. But then something strange happened. Every signal, every satellite feed, every channel went silent. The alien ship had shut down human technology with a single invisible wave. Mobile phones went dark, televisions blank, even radio screamed with static and then died. The world was blind, the world was deaf, the world was powerless. Panic spread quickly. Crowds gathered in city centers hoping for answers, but no answers came. People shouted, some prayed, some cried, some simply stared upward. It was fear like humanity had never felt before. They were not afraid of war. They were not afraid of bombs. They were afraid of the unknown, afraid of the silence from the sky. And then, the silence broke. A voice came, not from speakers, not from radios, but inside every human head. It was cold, cruel, and sharp, like metal scraping across stone. Humans, the voice said, your time of play is over. The crowds froze. Children hid behind their mothers. Soldiers dropped their weapons in shock. The voice was everywhere, in every brain, impossible to escape. The aliens had spoken, but they did not offer peace. They did not demand surrender. They laughed. The sound of alien laughter filled the human mind, a sound so strange and cruel it made hearts freeze. It was not the laughter of joy, but of mockery, of superiority. The laughter of something that saw humans as toys, not equals. People begged for answers. Why were they here? What did they want? What would happen next? But the aliens did not explain. The giant ship simply floated above Earth, like a dark moon that had claimed the sky. Nights no longer felt like nights. The stars were gone, hidden by the shadow of the ship. The world had become smaller, trapped under the alien gaze. In secret rooms, world leaders gathered. They argued, shouted, demanded to fight, demanded to hide, demanded to speak. But no one knew how. Their technology was dead, their weapons useless, their defenses broken. The strongest armies on Earth were weaker than a child before this alien power. And yet in the middle of this fear something grew. Not hope, not yet, but a question. Why had the aliens come? If they wanted war, they could have destroyed Earth. In seconds, if they wanted slaves, they could have taken humans without resistance. If they wanted resources, they could have stripped the planet bare. But they had done none of these things. Instead, they laughed. Instead, they mocked. Instead, they played a cruel joke. The world waited for the next move. Families stayed close. Neighbors whispered in the dark. The alien ship pulsed with blue light like the beat of a giant heart. It was waiting too, watching, enjoying the fear it had planted. And in that endless night, humanity realized one thing. Life had changed forever. The unexpected arrival was not the end. It was only the beginning. The alien ship hung above Earth. Like a heavy shadow, for 3 days it stayed silent. No sound, no attack, no demand, only waiting. Humanity lived in fear, holding its breath, wondering what would come next. The sky had become a prison, and every sunrise felt colder than the one before then. On the fourth day, the voice returned. It came again inside every human mind, sharp and merciless. Humans, the voice said, you call yourselves clever, you call yourselves strong, but we see only weak animals playing with toys you do not deserve. A wave of cruel laughter followed, pressing against every ear, every thought. It was not just sound. It was humiliation. It was mockery burned deep into the soul. The aliens did not send soldiers, they did not fire weapons. Instead, they gave an order, a challenge, a cruel joke. For 30 days, the voice said, you will live without your machines, without your technology, without your crutches. In this time, the power of your world will remain in our hands. If you survive, perhaps we will speak to you again. If you fail, your species is unworthy of this planet. Then, with a pulse of blue light from the massive ship, everything went dark. Every machine, every engine, every screen, every circuit was dead. Cars stopped in the middle of highways. Planes fell from the sky. Cities were drowned in silence. Hospitals cried out in horror as their machines shut down. Armies stood powerless, weapons useless. The world had been pushed backward in a single heartbeat. At first, there was chaos. People screamed, panicked, ran through the streets. Shops were looted. Fights broke out over food and water. Without power, the cities that once glowed with light became dark cages of fear. Children asked their parents why the stars were gone, and no parent had an answer. In the countryside, silence spread across farms and villages. Everywhere, humans felt smaller than they had ever felt before. The aliens watched. Invisible eyes scanned every city, every family, every broken machine. They expected collapse. They expected humans to destroy themselves in panic. To the aliens, it was only entertainment. Their cruel joke was nothing more than a game, a theater of suffering. But something unexpected began to happen. In the ruins of dead machines, humans did not only scream and fall. Some began to adapt. In the countryside, farmers brought out old tools made of wood and iron. Neighbors gathered together to share food. Families lit fires and told stories in the dark. Doctors used paper and handwritten notes to guide their patients. Teachers drew letters and numbers on chalkboards again. What was meant to be a curse was slowly becoming a strange test of spirit. Yet in the cities, life was harder. Crowds fought. For control of water, gangs rose in the shadows, but even there, sparks of unity began to appear. Strangers helped children find their families. Old men showed the young how to make simple shelters. Mothers formed groups to protect the weak. The darkness did not kill all kindness, instead it made kindness shine brighter. Still, fear remained. What if the aliens changed their minds? What if they ended the game early? What if they destroyed Earth anyway? Every night people looked up at the giant ship glowing blue against the black sky. It felt like an eye that never closed, an eye that waited for humanity to fail. And yet, even under that cruel gaze, humanity refused to stop. In secret, leaders tried to plan. With no digital tools, generals wrote commands on paper and sent messengers on foot. Scientists met in candlelight, searching through old books for forgotten methods. They remembered times before computers, before satellites, before the endless machines. And slowly, painfully, they tried to rebuild from memory, from willpower, from unity. The aliens laughed. Look at them, the voice whispered inside human minds, scratching in the dirt like animals. But beneath the laughter, there was something else. A flicker of doubt, a shadow of unease. For in their cruel joke, they had planted something dangerous, not weakness but resilience, not despair but defiance. The 30 days had only just begun. The aliens thought they had broken humanity, but in truth, they had lit a fire, and that fire was spreading. The cruel joke was no longer just theirs. It was becoming humanity's test, humanity's fight, humanity's secret strength. The first week without machines was the hardest. Cities that once never slept had turned into jungles of silence. Dark buildings stood like empty giants, their windows cold and lifeless. The streets were filled with confusion, fear, and hunger. The modern world had died in a single night, and people were forced to face a life they thought was long forgotten. In New York, families crowded together in tall buildings without light. Water pumps no longer worked, elevators were dead, food spoiled inside powerless fridges, people carried buckets to rivers and streams, learning again what it meant to fight. For the basics, some grew desperate, stealing from neighbors, but others shared what little they had. The city was breaking apart, but inside that breaking, new bonds began to form. Across the ocean, in Europe, the silence was the same. Trains stood frozen on their tracks, airplanes rusted where they had landed, hospitals fought to save lives with candles and handwritten notes, doctors boiled water over fire, nurses carried buckets instead of pushing buttons. Everywhere, the modern world felt like it had been pushed back into the dark ages, but humans are creatures of survival. And when despair should have crushed them, something else began to rise. In villages, farmers returned to the soil with their hands, planting seeds without machines. Fishermen carved wooden boats, pushing into rivers and seas with simple oars. Children watched their grandparents show them old tricks once thought useless in a world of machines. Now those tricks were the keys to survival. The aliens watched with cruel amusement. They had expected screaming, collapse, and endless fighting. And yes, there was fighting, there was chaos, there was death, but there was also adaptation. Each day humans learned something new, or rather, something ancient: how to light fire without fuel, how to travel by horse, how to carry news by foot and not by wire. The aliens laughed, but beneath the laughter, they began to whisper among themselves. In Asia, entire towns gathered together like one family. When power died, lanterns returned. When engines stopped, carts rolled. Markets opened under the sun, and people traded food for clothes, clothes for tools, tools for stories. Life was slower, harder, but strangely alive. And in that slowness, humans remembered something. They remembered the power of community. Still, it was not easy. Nights were filled with fear. Without lights, the world became darker than anyone could imagine. Shadows stretched across empty streets, and every sound felt louder. Dogs barked at nothing. People whispered about shapes moving in the dark. Was it hunger? Was it madness? Or was it the aliens testing them further? No one knew, and the fear of not knowing was heavier than hunger itself. The rich and powerful struggled just like the poor. Luxury houses without power were as cold as tiny shacks. Fancy cars became useless statues of metal. Money lost its meaning when food and fire mattered more. For the first time in centuries, all humans stood on the same ground. Weak or strong, rich or poor, they had to face the same struggle. Children adapted faster than adults. They laughed around fire, played with sticks and stones. They learned quickly to walk without lights, to eat less, to imagine more. Their innocence became courage, reminding parents not to fall apart. Perhaps the aliens did not see it, but children carried the seed of humanity's secret strength. In hidden places, scientists and leaders whispered in the dark. They used chalk on stone walls, ink on scraps of paper. They drew maps, planned routes, and dreamed of a way to fight back. Every meeting was dangerous. Every candle could betray them to alien eyes. But they kept planning. Even when machines were dead, human imagination was alive. And imagination was something the aliens could not turn off. The aliens' cruel joke was meant to break the human spirit. Instead, it was forcing humans to remember who they really were. Not creatures of machines, but creatures of survival. Not slaves to power, but masters of adaptation. The struggle was terrible, yes, but in that struggle, a new strength was being born. The second week began. The fires burned brighter. The food was shared wider. The plans grew sharper. And though fear still lived in every heart, another feeling began to rise beside it. It was not victory, not yet. It was something smaller, but far more dangerous to the aliens. It was hope. The alien ship still hung above Earth, glowing with its cold blue veins. It had become a second moon, a reminder of power, of fear, of helplessness. Yet down below on the ground, something had begun to change. The first shock was fading. The first chaos was calming. Humanity, wounded and trembling, was learning how to stand again. The aliens thought humans would crawl forever, but now they watched as men and women began to walk, not with machines but with will. Fires burned in the cities where once neon lights had ruled. Villages sang old songs to keep their spirits alive, and everywhere, people were finding ways to survive. The first turning point came not from armies, not from governments, it came from ordinary people. A farmer who taught his neighbors how to plant without machines, a teacher who gathered children under the sun and drew lessons in the dirt, a group of strangers who risked their lives to share water with the weak. These small acts lit sparks, and the sparks began to spread. By the second week, unity was growing. Where once people fought for bread, now they shared it. Where once they cried in fear, now they whispered stories of courage. Humanity was remembering something deeper than technology. They were remembering each other. The aliens mocked them, their voices echoing in every mind. Look at the little creatures pretending they are strong, pretending they are clever. But behind the laughter there was silence, because the aliens had expected only collapse. They had expected humans to fall into endless war. Yet what they saw was survival, and worse for them, adaptation. In the mountains of South America, small communities began to build windmills with wood and cloth. They ground grain into flour without machines. In Africa, tribes shared ancient skills, showing how to track water, how to build fire, how to heal with plants. In Asia, families came together to form massive kitchens, feeding hundreds at a time. What was once forgotten was alive again. Every culture, every memory, every old story became a weapon. And then, something even greater happened. Scattered groups began to connect. Without radios, without satellites, without phones, they used runners, riders, and signals. A drumbeat across hills, a smoke signal over forests, a torch burning on a tower, slowly, painfully. Humans began to link together again. Piece by piece, they were rebuilding a broken network, not of machines, but of people. This was the true turning point. Because for the first time since the silence began, humanity realized they were not alone. One village heard of another, one city found a town, one group met another group, and in those meetings, they found courage, they shared food, shared ideas, shared hope. It was as if the earth itself was weaving its people together into something stronger. The aliens grew restless. They had come to humiliate, to laugh, to show their power. But now, they began to question. How could such fragile creatures bend but not break? How could weakness transform into strength? How could chaos turn into unity? In secret, human leaders met under candlelight. With maps drawn by hand, with scouts sent on foot, they planned. They could not fight the aliens yet, not with weapons, not with machines. But they could prepare. Every plan, every message, every whisper was a seed of resistance. The struggle was no longer just survival. It was the beginning of defiance. Children played games in the dark, pretending to fight the aliens. Their laughter was not fear. It was courage. Mothers and fathers listened, and something stirred inside them. If children could dream of victory, then perhaps it was not impossible. Perhaps this cruel test could become something else. The aliens sent storms, heavy rains, strange lights in the sky. They wanted to break the growing spirit, to remind humans they were still in control. But each storm was faced. People tied roofs with rope, dug trenches, built stronger shelters. Every challenge became a lesson. Every hardship became proof that they could survive more. The turning point was not loud. It was not sudden. It was quiet, steady, like a flame refusing to die in the wind. The aliens looked down and saw not despair, but determination. And for the first time, they wondered if their cruel joke had gone too far. For what they had meant as humiliation was becoming transformation. The third week was coming. The fire of humanity was burning brighter. The turning point had arrived. And with it, the beginning of something the aliens had not expected. The beginning of hope strong enough to challenge the stars. The world was still dark, still silent, but it was no longer broken. By the third week, humanity had changed. The weak had become stronger, the afraid had become braver, and while the alien ship floated above like a cruel god, the people of Earth no longer bowed their heads. The first signs of resistance were small: a group of farmers building wind-powered machines to grind grain, a band of engineers in the desert using mirrors to focus sunlight into heat, old inventors pulling dusty books from shelves and showing others how to build water wheels. The aliens had taken away electricity, but they had not taken away human hands, and human hands were busy creating again. Scientists gathered in secret. Without computers, they used paper, chalkboards, and memory. They studied the stars with old telescopes. They calculated with pencils and beads. It was slow, it was painful, but it was working. Piece by piece, knowledge was being reborn. In the forests, hunters sharpened wooden spears, teaching the young to move silently through the trees. In the mountains, soldiers trained with bows, swords, and ancient tactics. In the deserts, riders carried messages across endless sands, connecting distant towns. What was once weakness had become training. What was once survival was turning into preparation. The aliens mocked again, their cruel voice dripping with laughter. Look at the little animals scratching in the dirt, pretending to be warriors. But deep inside their laughter was unease because the humans were not dying. They were growing, not weaker, but harder, sharper, united. The first act of open defiance came from a fishing village. Aliens had sent drones, small machines that floated like glowing insects. They scanned the people, mocked them with flashing lights. But one night, the villagers struck back. They trapped a drone with nets, broke it open with stones, and hid the pieces. It was a tiny victory, but it spread like fire across the land. If one village could fight back, perhaps all of humanity could. More drones came, and more were destroyed. Humans studied their broken parts, trying to understand. Even without machines, they learned patterns, weaknesses. The drones were not gods. They were only tools, and tools could be broken. In Europe, blacksmiths forged new weapons, not guns, not bombs, but steel blades and shields that could last forever. In Africa, great drums thundered across the plains, carrying warnings faster than any broken radio. In Asia, hidden schools taught children how to fight with their minds as well as their hands. Everywhere, the world was moving, shifting, preparing. The aliens grew angry. This was not the joke they had planned. They wanted fear. They wanted despair. They wanted surrender. Instead, they saw courage. They saw organization. They saw the first sparks of rebellion. They responded with fire, sending beams of blue energy to destroy entire fields. But humans planted again, faster, stronger, refusing. To give up, the fight was not equal, not yet. One ship above could destroy the world if it chose, but the aliens did not destroy, they only tested. And in those tests, humans grew sharper. Every loss was a lesson, every wound a teacher, every failure a step forward. Children carried secret notes through forests. Elders taught forgotten songs that carried messages hidden in their words. Merchants smuggled tools from one town to another. The resistance was no longer scattered. It was becoming organized. Every village, every town, every family was part of it. Earth was waking up, and still, the alien ship watched, its blue veins glowing, its laughter echoing across the night sky. But behind that laughter, fear was growing, for the cruel joke was not breaking humanity. It was forging it. Every challenge, every cruel act, every insult was turning into strength. The world was readying itself. The people had fire in their hearts, iron in their hands, and unity in their voices. They were not fighting with machines. Not yet. They were fighting with will, and will was something no alien could switch off. The first true sparks of resistance had been lit, and soon, those sparks would become fire. The fight had begun. Humanity was no longer just surviving, humanity was preparing to fight back. The alien ship still hovered above Earth, a black shadow with veins of cold blue light. It had watched for weeks, mocking, laughing, testing. It had given humans a cruel challenge meant to break them. But now something unexpected was rising, something the aliens had not planned for, not feared before. something dangerous. Humanity was no longer only surviving. They were changing. Every farm, every village, every city was discovering a hidden strength. It was not in machines, it was not in weapons. It was in unity, memory, and imagination. The aliens sent new trials, storms of strange lightning that tore across the skies, drones that dropped from the ship like metal insects, scanning, spying, attacking. They thought fear would return. They thought humans would fall apart. But each time, humanity adapted. Each storm was met with stronger shelters. Each drone was met with clever traps. Each attack was met with courage, not surrender. In the deserts, tribes dug deeper wells, learning to store water for months. In the mountains, villages carved tunnels into stone to hide from alien fire. In the forests, hunters made traps that even machines could not escape. Everywhere humans learned. Everywhere, humans grew harder, faster, smarter. The aliens whispered in human minds again, "You are weak creatures. Your strength is a lie. You cannot last." But their words no longer cut as deeply, because humans had discovered something greater than fear. They had discovered resilience. The more they were pushed, the stronger they became. In secret caves, scientists bent over scraps of alien drones. They could not rebuild machines yet, but they could understand them, piece by piece. They mapped the strange circuits, piece by piece. They wrote ideas on walls. The aliens had taken away their tools, but they could not take away their curiosity. And curiosity was the sharpest weapon of all. Meanwhile, families and communities grew closer. Neighbors who once ignored each other now shared bread and water. Children became messengers of hope, carrying stories from one village to the next. Old songs returned, old lessons returned, old wisdom returned. The world was remembering its forgotten past, and in that past there was power. The aliens grew restless. They had never seen a species fight back in this way. Most worlds broke, most species bent, most lives surrendered. But humanity was different. Every day of struggle made them more dangerous, not less. What was meant as a cruel joke was turning into a forge. And inside that forge, a weapon was being shaped. The weapon was not made of steel. It was not a bomb. It was not a gun. The weapon was spirit. The weapon was unity. The weapon was the will to fight no matter the cost. And that weapon was spreading across the earth like fire. In the third week, strange things began to happen. Groups that had never met before found ways to connect. Villages thousands of miles apart learned of each other's struggles. Messages traveled by fire, by song, by runner, by symbol scratched into stone. The aliens thought humanity was cut off, isolated, broken. But instead, humanity was building a new network. A network of people, stronger than any machine, soldiers trained with wooden weapons. But they trained, together, learning to move as one. Farmers grew food not just for themselves, but for their neighbors. Children learned lessons not of machines, but of survival, courage, and cunning. The future was being written not with electricity, but with blood and determination. And through it all, the ship watched, its cold blue veins pulsing in the night sky. The aliens laughed still, but their laughter was thinner now, weaker, because for the first time they were not sure. Not sure if they were the masters, not sure if their joke had gone too far, not sure if the little creatures below were truly as weak as they believed. Humanity's secret strength had been revealed. It was not technology. It was not machines. It was the unbreakable will to survive, adapt, and rise again. No matter how cruel the trial, no matter how heavy the hand, no matter how deep the wound, humans refused to die, and in that refusal there was power greater than any alien weapon. The 30 days were almost over. The end of the trial was coming, and humanity stood not broken, but ready. The cruel joke had become their training. Their suffering had become their strength, and their strength was now a threat to the stars themselves. The 30th day arrived. The earth was tired, hungry, scarred, but still alive. The people had suffered storms, hunger, silence, and fear, but they had not fallen. Instead, they had risen stronger, harder, more united than ever before. The alien ship glowed brighter than it ever had. Its blue veins spread across the black sky like lightning frozen in place. The voice returned, heavy and cruel, echoing inside every mind. "Humans, your trial is complete," it said. "You were meant to crawl, to beg, to break, but you stand still," the voice hissed, "and that is interesting." Silence followed. Billions of humans looked up, waiting, hearts beating as one. Would the aliens destroy them now? Would they leave? Would they laugh again? The world held its breath. The voice came again, colder, sharper. "You think you are strong, but you are nothing. You are animals playing with sticks, pretending to be warriors. We could burn your world in one breath." And yet, there was something new in that voice, something humans had never heard. Before doubt, the aliens had watched for 30 days. They had seen humans fall, but also rise. They had seen cruelty answered with kindness. They had seen fear answered with courage. They had seen weakness turn into strength. It was a pattern they had not expected, a secret they could not ignore. From the deserts to the mountains, from the forests to the cities, humanity waited. Children clutched their parents' hands, soldiers held wooden weapons ready, scientists hid scraps of alien drones, farmers stood tall with dirt on their hands. The whole planet was one people now, united by the struggle. The voice spoke again. "Perhaps we underestimated you," it said, slow, thoughtful, almost unwilling. "Perhaps your spirit is more dangerous than your machines." Another laugh followed, but this time it was weaker, thinner, unsure. The cruel joke had turned into a strange kind of respect, or perhaps a strange kind of fear. Then, without warning, beams of light fell from the alien ship. People screamed, expecting fire, destruction, death. But the light did not burn. It spread across the earth, restoring power, restoring machines. Engines roared again, lights flickered back to life, radios screamed with voices. The world's heart began to beat with technology, once more, but humanity was different now. They no longer saw machines as gods. They no longer believed survival depended on wires and circuits. They knew their true strength was not in technology, but in themselves. The aliens had given back the old world, but humanity had already built a new one inside their hearts. The ship hung silent for hours. It did not move. It did not attack. It only watched. And then, the voice returned, softer, sharper. "We leave you now," it said, "not because you are strong, but because you are dangerous. Your weakness has become your weapon. Your suffering has become your strength. We will watch from the dark, and when the time comes, we will meet again." With that, the ship began to rise higher and higher, fading into the black sea of stars, until it was only a speck, and then nothing at all. The sky belonged to Earth again, but it did not feel the same. The people who looked up no longer felt small. They felt ready. Across the world, voices rose in cheers, in songs, in tears. The cruel joke had ended, but its memory would never die, for it had given humanity something greater than machines. It had given them unity, courage, and an unbreakable will. Children ran through streets filled with light again, but now they told stories of fire and darkness, of survival and hope. Fathers sharpened steel. Mothers taught strength. Leaders wrote new laws of unity. The world was alive again, not because of the aliens, but because of humanity's refusal to die. And somewhere deep in space, hidden in the dark, the aliens whispered to each other, "These creatures may be the most dangerous of all. They laugh, they cry, they suffer, and yet they rise again. Perhaps their destiny is not to be ruled, but to rule." The trial was over, but the story had only just begun, for humanity had discovered its secret strength, and the stars themselves were now within reach.